the stock market in Israel is actually doing the right thing, because if the signaling is that Israel is going to boom when this is over, Israel is going to be winner, and Israel is going to deliver even more on the things that they've delivered on in the past, and innovation and helping the world.
Hi folks, James here, and welcome to the Spiro Circle, this time in collaboration with Forbes Israel. This week has been strange. War with Iran has broken out, flights have been grounded, businesses are slowly coming to a stop, but life is going on. So the interview today I was supposed to do in a studio with Ezra Gardner, partner at Varana Capital, and Travis Vapp, CEO at South Valley. They were supposed to come to Israel and have meetings with investors and politicians and committees, but of course they couldn't make it. But we still did the interview. Why not? It was on all of our calendars, and so we committed to it. We spoke about the amazing feeling they had coming to Tel Aviv for the first time. That's Travis. Ezra's come many times. And we also spoke about the surprising and counterintuitive reaction to the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, which has been surging this week and seeing record numbers. They spoke to me a bit about the testament of the Israeli people and the founders and investors here. And they also spoke about how Israel can better tell its story and share its narrative of just how special Startup Nation can be. It's really not a story that's being told. And it's up to everyone who is familiar with the ecosystem to play their part. Anyway, the show must go on. So we recorded this episode in the most chaotic week that we've had in a long time. And I really hope you get some interesting insights. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having us. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know we're meeting virtually today. We were supposed to be physical. You were supposed to be coming to visit us here in Israel, but geopolitics got in the way. So I do apologize for that. But I do want to thank you for being flexible and expressing some of the resilience that we have here. I want to start, please, by addressing some of the things that you folks do, which is the idea of building bridges across Israel and America through some of the investment strategies that you take. So, Ezra, I want to start with you, please, if I may. Your work has spanned different areas, different investments, and different involvement with Israeli founders. I want to understand what keeps you focused on this bridge between Israel and America. And I want to understand how maybe that may look for you in times where you can't physically be in one country or the other.
Yeah. Well, the obvious reason is because I am both an American and an Israeli dual passport holder. My mother was 9th generation born in Israel. My background is in finance and investing for the last 27 years. And when I started my firm 15 or 16 years ago, it wasn't an accident that I chose to connect to the two worlds that I lived in, the two countries that I'm a citizen of, which is Israel and the United States. And the amazing thing about the Israeli ecosystem is, if it's a great place to do business. People are very open, they're direct, and now more than ever, actually, and maybe it's the opposite of what you think. Now more than ever, the bridge is stronger between the United States and Israel.
That's amazing. We love to hear that in times like this. Travis, I want to bring you in, please, if I may. You spent some time in Tel Aviv before. You were planning on coming alongside Ezra this week. You've been in Tel Aviv before. Talk us through some of your initial reactions to seeing the place for the first time, and talk us through a bit about what that visit looked like to you.
Absolutely. I'd always heard wonderful things about Israel, Tel Aviv. But until I went there, I couldn't understand the economic opportunity in the country. I've never seen more construction anywhere in the world. I've never seen more opportunity. And also the people absolutely blew me away because they're kind of a mix of Midwest personalities with Colorado personalities. And I'm a Colorado native here in the US. And it just really connects well with me. And it doesn't matter your stature, your status, or whatever. If you have something to offer, you have a seat at the table. And everybody's just inclusive and they want to help each other thrive. And it's a culture that just really connects well with me. Plus, like Ezra said, it's just a really nice bridge between the U.S. And Israel. And I hope more people can see what an amazing country, what amazing culture and people there are, and how much opportunity there really is there.
The food was pretty good too, right, Travis?
The food is outstanding, absolutely outstanding.
Oh, well, we love to hear it. Every time folks come and visit for the first time, the food actually is one of the things that people say is a standout, and you definitely notice it when you leave Tel Aviv, and then you're kind of craving some of that food that you've gotten so used to. I want to keep it a bit focused, if I may. We can always turn back to food in a bit later on. I want to understand a bit more about the struggles that these Israeli companies, regardless of innovation and the resilience that the founders may have, and some of that typical reputation that some of these startup nation entrepreneurs and companies have. Despite all of that, there is still a barrier for some of these companies to penetrate US markets. And I want to understand why that may be, considering that, as we've established on the call already, there is such a strong connection between the two countries, and in some ways, cultures align a lot. So, Ezra, maybe if we could start with you, can we start with a bit about where there's a bit of a barrier there and where maybe clashes come up, and why bridges are so important to help connect those two?
Yeah. I mean, the world has been shifting in terms of innovation from software to hardware. Okay. And Israel was always initially known as a cyber, expert, software expert. And the world shifted to hardware. If you look at the biggest companies in the world today, NVIDIA, Amazon, Microsoft, semiconductors, they're all hardware companies. Tesla, they're hardware companies. They have a software stack associated with it, but they're all hardware companies. And it turns out actually that Israel has amazing hardware too. It just hasn't, it's been going on in the background for decades. It's been less famous than cyber, for example. Two areas that we focused on for years are agritech and construction and property tech. Now, agritech, it may not seem obvious, but it is. If you know, Netafim was the one that invented drip irrigation, and it's the biggest company of its time that came from Israel. And so whenever you're trying to penetrate from Israel, when you do an innovation into the United States, you have to develop a go-to-market and a sales process in the United States, and it's a different culture. That bridge is easier to build and doesn't need to be as wide. Let's say when you're selling enterprise software to a CTO at a Fortune 500 company, where you're just speaking about the tech, you're not talking to the end customer. When you're talking about agriculture and you're talking about construction, which are huge trillion-dollar industries, which is a great place for Israel to proliferate its innovations, it's a totally different culture on top of a different culture. If you show up with the wrong boots, with the wrong mud on your boots, you may not make the sale. And so Travis, who comes from the construction industry, and I had an idea to build a much wider bridge for this type of hardware innovation, where we would set up a distribution company focused, which is called Gesher Distribution Company, bridge, which means bridge in Hebrew, between these amazing Israeli ag tech, construction, prop tech companies and the US customers, which is a great market for them.
Wonderful. I love that as well. And I love the areas that we are, because it's true. I mean, I've done a lot of reporting recently in this. I've done deep dives into deep tech, if you will, and some of the physical infrastructure that is being built to accommodate a lot of the software that is basically channeling all of these revolutions. And so you're right, there's so much activity going on here. And I read today that Israel alone is responsible for 20% of NVIDIA's chip activity, which is just an extraordinary number, just to build on what you were saying about these big companies establishing presence here. I want to stay on ag tech a bit, because I think you touched on a really interesting point, which was that necessity breeds innovation, and that Israel and Israelis have always been in a position where they've had to innovate due to necessity. So ag tech was one of the early examples of that, and cyber was another one as well. I mean, as a bracket of defense, right? Because Israel and the country was always under attack, and then the attacks went from physical to digital. And so I think that through line is quite understood. But talk to me a bit about ag tech and some of the accomplishments that you are seeing, where you're looking, because there's a whole other side of this necessity that maybe isn't so known outside of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the the two most precious resources in the world are water and power. Okay, um, water was a deficit that Israel faced from the very beginning, early days of the Chalutzim coming to build the kibbutzim, and that's where Netafim came from, right? And so this is now true across the world more and more. So it comes from the same exact point, James, that you mentioned of necessity. Water was a necessity. Water you need for agriculture, and crop yields. So there was a company that we were supposed to meet with in Israel in person. We're going to do a Zoom with them that has a new type of fertilizer, which has a fungus that attaches to the roots that not only grows better crop yields, but it also takes carbon out of the sky, and you get carbon credits for that, right? So that it's an intersection of energy, of energy issues and water issues and yield issues. So Israel has always been on the forefront of this, and now the technology is so good that it needs to be exported to maximize its value.
Travis, I'm going to ask you to build on that, if I may. Is there anything in those sectors that you are seeing in terms of their storytelling and their messaging to investors outside of Israel? Anything different from maybe more traditional sectors like AI or SaaS or cybersecurity?
So that's a really good question. What we see is people in these sectors. They're very humble, they're very driven, they're very focused, they're very intelligent. But the one thing that they forget to do is tell their story. And they just take it for granted. And that's not a bad thing, but they're not used to telling their story about how amazing their products are and what impact they actually have. Okay. And when you look at the differences between the two cultures in the short time that I've known Ezra and been able to be a part of this, is Israeli people solve problems at an amazing, intellectually impressive level, along with speed and thoughtfulness. The part that America really does amazing is an entrepreneurial spirit and being able to take nothing and turn it into something. And it's just bred in the culture. And when you mix those two together and you're able to tell a story and then give people solutions that are meaningful to them, not talking about the product, but what it means to those people on the ground that they can connect with, it's a really powerful combination of two really successful ways of doing things. And it just makes it better. And that's really kind of what the focus is how do we help people tell their story in a way so each of them can do what their God-given talents are.
I mean, we spoke ahead of this call, and you said something that actually really stuck with me, which was that you said that countries let others tell their story. And I can't imagine a more dangerous statement for a country like Israel, because Israel has been allowing so many other factors to dictate its story and its narrative. So the best way to counter that is to kind of take it head on. So what did that statement mean to you in terms of Israel's ecosystem? And I kind of want to stay away from the nastiness of the macro narrative, but in terms of Israel's ecosystem itself, what did that mean that countries are letting others tell their story? Like, what are the stories out there? Because from my point of view, it's very maybe naive to say, but it's quite obvious that there is this messaging of innovation and entrepreneurship. But what are other countries saying?
If let's just really boil it down to basic business, right? Like the greatest brands in the world have a unique way of telling their story, right? It's not about always being the best or the smartest or the brightest, but they tell their story in a way that connects with people, that allows them to drive commerce. And what happens is if we look through business, we can see that through history, whether we go back to the Great Depression, through the 1950s, 70s, the 2000s, and the ones that thrive sometimes don't have the best products. The ones that do understand how to tell the story. And sometimes that's a real shame because we want the best ideas, the best solutions to come forward. And if people are there and they do have those best ideas, but they're not telling that story, talking through people and learning that technique, what happens is we're all worse off for it. And but that's also not a bad thing, James, because we all need to learn, we all need to get better. And typically the best people, they're they're simple in effect that people take them for granted because they don't understand how much intelligence and how much strength is behind them. Um,
Hey, James, can I build on that for 1 second? Because I
Please,
think I
yeah.
know where you're going. So you're living in Israel and you know about the book, you know a lot of people, but not everybody, Startup Nation. What does that mean? Who's read it? Who knows this? Um, do you remember, but do you remember the very successful Intel campaign, Intel Inside?
I believe so, yeah. Rings a
The
bell.
reason that they came up with this very successful branding called Intel Inside is because Intel was a semiconductor chip and no one saw it. So when they came and they brought home their IBM or their Dell computer or whatever, or at that time there was also Gateway computers, they didn't know there was an Intel chip in there. So they came up with this branding that it's Intel Inside. They gave marketing dollars to Dell and IBM, and they put a sticker on there that said Intel Inside because you didn't see it. So I wrote an editorial in one of the Israeli publications a year or two ago. I said Israel Inside because it's not what you think from living in Israel from the outside. No one knows that Israel is inside, so you have to brand it Israel Inside because Israel is inside your cell phone. The chips that were designed for the cell phone for Apple were designed at the semiconductor VLSI lab in Israel. Okay, the pacemaker that you have inside of you was designed in Israel. All you say it's Israel Inside, and that's the branding thing that lacks because it's the branding again staying away from geopolitical. It's inside. Israel's economy, Israel's innovation is almost exclusively based on B2B, business to business, not B2C, business to consumer. Why? Because the B2C market in Israel is small compared to the world, and cultures are different. So why would you design, a consumer product that you don't know if it's going to work around the world? So almost exclusively Israel is B2B. But what does B2B mean? B2B means it's inside, right? You're selling a motor to a motorcycle company. You're selling a chip to a data center. You're selling a pacemaker to a hospital. It's inside. You don't see it. And so it isn't seen the same way, perhaps that you see it from inside of Israel.
I think that's a really good point, and I think it's a really effective way to capture the narrative there, or not even capture it. That sounds negative, but like to take hold and take control of the narrative. Because I always say that about the boycotts. When people are like, "Let's boycott Israel," and they'll point to a pot of hummus in the supermarket, and they'll say, "We're not buying that." And it's like, well, okay, if you're going to boycott Israel, give away your iPhone, give away your computer, yeah.
Right.
So I feel like that was quite an effective form of messaging initially, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe this is the cynic in me, but maybe it's escaped us in the last few years in this kind of post-war. I don't like saying post-war, but like in this post-October 7 world that Israel seems to be in. What are some of the new and the world seems to be in? What are some of the challenges in reclaiming some of those narratives and building those bridges? Because there's got to be some challenges there.
I'll tell you what the good news is. Okay. The good news is here's the flip side of B2B, where, the bad side is what we just talked about. You don't get the branding. You don't get that, wow, Israel's doing something great. You don't get that headline that says you support Israel, even if you don't realize it. Right. The flip side of that is that, if you are a data center that needs to buy a network interface card to build the next 100 Amazon data centers, the purchasing agent of that, the B2B, they're looking for the network interface card that works the best. They're not looking for the one that has a particular colored flag on it, this or that. There's no boycott. Okay. If you can sell an electric motor that's half the weight and twice the power and half the cost and doesn't use rare earth metals from China, GM will buy that. Okay. So the good news is that business is booming. Reputation, maybe not. Business is booming.
I find that a lot of the activity happens kind of under the surface or behind the scenes. So it's people try to avoid the big loud protests or statements and everything, but things are still happening behind, I want to say behind closed doors, but kind of things are still prodding along and going along. You're actually reminding me of an episode of Shark Tank. We call it Dragon's Den in the UK, but Shark Tank in the US. And a guy came, and I'm going to get so many of these details wrong, but he came along and he had a sponge for a broom or something. It was like a device for a broom, and he wanted to sell it. And one investor said, I can make you the face and name of this brand, and you can be the guy that sells this new broom. And the other shark or dragon shark said, don't worry about any of that. I want to just sell the piece, and we'll sell it to every other manufacturer that develops brooms or cleaning products. And the guy chose the opportunity to be the front face and brand of what he invented. And the guy I was watching it with said, what a bad business decision. What he should have done is just sat back and let all the other businesses buy his product, and he can just enjoy the fruits of the labor. So it's like an interesting B2C versus B2B idea. It seems like he wanted to be the face. I can't remember the episode now, but the ideas just come to me. But it makes sense. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I see the analogy. It's true. Yeah, I mean, it's bigger, when you go broader, and if you are marketing, who are you marketing to? You have to have marketing to all. I get what you're saying, and I agree.
I want to talk now a bit more about Varana Capital and Gesher and some of the work that you folks actually doing. I know you guys were supposed to come to Israel this week. For those who are watching this in the future, this is, we're in the middle of tensions with Iran and the Gulf region. So at time of recording, the airports are grounded. No one's flying in or out. Guys, talk to me a bit about the work that you folks are doing and some of the things you hoped to achieve when you were here, but then also, as you said earlier, the things that you're still doing, like this conversation is still happening and some of the meetings you had lined up. So talk me through all of that, because it sounds really exciting and a testament to the Israeli spirit that we mentioned at the start of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say something quickly and then let Travis jump in, because I think it's really a testament to the appreciation that Israelis have from foreigners like Travis that want to come and see the opportunity there. But we were on a mission to come and meet with a lot of the government officials, high level Chevre Knesset, members of parliament, as well as cabinet members, ministers of various economic development and construction, and obviously our plane was literally canceled, I think, a couple hours before we were supposed to fly, when the missiles started flying. And I said to my staff in Israel, call up all of these high level officials that we're meeting, and ask them if they'd like a Zoom. And my staff said, well, Ezra, a lot of them are in the security departments and they're going to be there. I said, but even just ask them just to say thank you, that we wish you want to be there. And 0 of them canceled. And I told Travis it was because of him, that this is, it's the prickly pear, the sabra, prickly on the outside, but on the inside soft. And Travis, didn't believe me, but I think now, after a few days of these meetings, maybe you do.
Yeah, Travis, please take it. What was your experience like from what Ezra said?
Everything is true with what Ezra is saying. And it's a little bit overwhelming to hear Ezra say that, because to me, these people are in a geopolitical conflict that I can't imagine because I'm not there and I'm not dealing with it. But the fact that we're on calls, on Zoom, on Teams, and it is 4 p.m., 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m. Israeli time, it just it's a little overwhelming to see these people in this activity not stopping. And then on the other side of it, it just reinforces the fact that I really like this culture and how well it gels with America. Because in America, we just flat out like to work. And in Israel, it's a whole nother level of working. And I, I'm overwhelmed by it because it just reinforces what good people there are, people that are focusing on much bigger things than what's happening right now on the ground. And they're driving economies and cultures and relationships forward and opportunities for both sides of the Atlantic. And it is exciting to see, but it's also overwhelming.
It's funny because the call we're having today is taking place obviously during the tensions we've just mentioned, but it also took place a few days after the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange hit record high numbers. So it's such a counterintuitive idea that a country would be thrown into geopolitical chaos and meetings would be cancelled and flights would be grounded, and yet the stock market continues to grow. And I was
I
doing
suggest a different heuristic to that. What if people like Travis and you and I and other people all around the United States are also on Zooms with Israeli executives and are realizing that work never stops, no matter what?
Well,
What, what,
that's
what
exactly what I was alluding to. I mean, for me personally, this interview was in
you
my
are.
calendar and it wasn't going to change. We said, hey, let's do it. The logistics changed, but the mission stayed the same. And back to the point of the stock exchange, I mean, we have to understand how that comes about, because I see online Israel's critics say, how can it be that the stock market's hitting record highs? And it's to what you folks were saying. It's the at the end of the day, it's the market confidence. It's the confidence in the entrepreneurs who will take a Zoom versus an in-person meeting. It's the fact that at any given time, at the early days of the war, there was about 15% of the high-tech Israeli workforce was out mobilized in the war. And that was indiscriminate, right? That could have been anyone from intern to CEO was just scooped up and, asked to fight in the army. And products shipped and meetings were met and milestones were achieved. So I think it's not just the energy, but it's the actual success rate. I mean, things continue, not without their bumps along the way, but to come out of those things on the other side naturally would instill confidence.
Yeah, and I hope that some of your listeners will appreciate what I'm about to say. That because I'm involved in deep tech and hardware. Okay, in my portfolio companies, we had more like 50%, 50, not 15, because these are the people that manage drones, that are involved in the hardware and the type of stuff that was more militarily focused. So we lost about not lost. We had to Miluim, we had recruited about 50% of our staff for some time, and if you can believe it, the productivity actually went up. People worked 10 times harder when half of the staff was gone. And to your point about the stock market, that I spent the first half of my career in the public markets. I know a little bit about them. The stock market is a predictor of what the belief or expectation is about what's going to happen in the future, not what's happened in the past. And it's very obvious. And I hope there are other people like Travis listening to this call that will take this to heart and will also want to come to Israel and also come and do business there. The stock market in Israel is actually doing the right thing, because if the signaling is that Israel is going to boom when this is over, Israel is going to be winner, and Israel is going to deliver even more on the things that they've delivered on in the past, and innovation and helping the world.
I mean, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange outperformed the Nasdaq in 2025. It performed
by a lot, by a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. So I think, and I'm not a capital markets guy, naturally. I follow it out of interest, but I'm one of those people that kind of looks and says, well, let me help this make sense. And I look through it. What can you tell me? You said just now you had a past in the markets and kind of examining these kinds of things. Are US public markets still viable for Israeli tech now? Or, I mean, I'm sure, of course, they still are. But in what ways are there maybe forks in the road here? Because if one market is performing one way, given the context of what's happening, versus another one's reaction, is that a cultural thing, economic thing? Like, talk me through maybe some
I mean,
like
this is
friction.
this is a topic that I happen to know quite a bit about. I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go, but Israel is the only Western modern market that produces consistent technology, where the majority of their companies that IPO are not primarily listed or even secondarily listed on the TASE, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And the question is why? And in the past, the answer has been that the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is not liquid enough. It doesn't get exposure. All of our businesses in the US anyway, because remember, we're B2B, we're not B2C, right? We're sure, we sell some soda streams in Israel, but where do we sell more of them? In the United States. So that's where you get that's where you get the exposure, right? So to answer your question succinctly, there's no way that it's going to stop, that Israel is going to be listing on the NASDAQ all of their companies, because this is their biggest market. But what I think will change, I believe will change, is that they will become dual listed, and they will, and the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange will also have them, instead of just having, let's say, Bank Hapoalim, or the domestic big businesses. And I believe that is a change in a lot of the CEOs of the large institutions in Israel that I talk to. I think if they were on the call with me, they would agree. I mean, we have them in our office and we talk to them. So I think it's gam v'gam. It's also and also. They're going to keep going on the NASDAQ, but more and more are going to be dual listed on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange.
Well, I just saw a few days ago. It didn't happen a few days ago, but I just saw that in January, it was announced that the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange is actually going to shift its trading hours Monday to Friday. It usually operates Sunday to Thursday, which is the work week in Israel, but it's shifting it to be more aligned with the Western markets and aligning itself and positioning itself a bit more similarly to the rest of the world. And for me, that was a big testament into where it intends to grow and shape itself. So it's definitely an exciting time.
Sounds like a bridge.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to understand now a bit about the business climate, because we've said now meetings move to Zoom and business goes on and everything. And Travis, maybe this is a good opportunity to bring you back in. I want to understand the tone and sentiment, not in a market point of view, but maybe in like a human point of view. So what is some of the sentiment feeling now about where to hedge? Is there hesitation still, or are people leaning more in? I mean, the understanding that I was getting is that the people that, and this may be an outdated view, but from what I was doing research in the past, is that people that invested in Israel before October 7 were continuing to invest in Israel, but those that hadn't before that were no longer. It was kind of like dipping the toe in the pool, and those that dipped the toe in the pool would dive in, and those who hadn't wouldn't. What are you what's it looking like on your end now? Are people acting more hesitantly, or are they jumping in? Talk to me a bit about the sentiment.
It's a really good question. There's a lot that we can unpack there. So two things, right? So on my first trip to Tel Aviv, we briefly met the previous CEO of Oracle in passing, and she mentioned that Tel Aviv was a startup culture, and that kind of ties back to some previous stuff about telling a story. What I will tell you in the U.S. is, at least in the markets that I'm involved in with the different business entities we invest, is we had a really nice run. Typically, our markets lag the rest of the economy 14 to 22 months. Okay, so construction and those things always lag. So when the rest of the economy starts to go down, construction typically starts to do better, right? But when the rest of the economy goes up, construction's starting to do worse. But underlying what I will tell you is there's more economic opportunity being developed in the long term in the US, and it's being driven by scarcity. Because what's been happening is a lot of people are putting their hands in their pockets, and there's a lot of reason. And this is Ezra's world, right? From a big picture, this is Ezra and where they've lived. But in the basic sense of my world is when people create scarcity, which sometimes that's a good thing because it creates pauses after run-ups, that creates even more opportunity. And then it comes back to places like Israel, where there is strong economic growth, there's strong population growth, there's very strong education, which then funds industry that creates more opportunity. And then it goes back to Israel telling their story. And like what Ezra mentioned before about Israel Inside, is businesses will want to do businesses where success is happening, where opportunity is. And go back to the comment about how it's quote unquote a startup culture. I, there's some truth to that, but there's also not truth to that because Israel is active, it's vibrant, and if you haven't been there, you need to go there and see. I mean, in my visit, and I think it feels like I'm making up. There's 400 tower cranes on high-rise construction when I was on top of the building visible, and it feels like I'm making the number up, but it's true. And that's the difference is once the story gets that momentum, that snowball rolling down the hill, it's going to be unstoppable. And you're going to see businesses doing more together between the two countries because you have scarcity and you have technology and you just have good people coming together. So I'm not sure if that quite answered your question.
Well, I wonder, and we may not know yet, James. I wonder if when the skies reopen, I know Travis will be there with me, but maybe the proxy for the answer to your question will be if Travis can grab a few more of his CEO buddies that could do business with Israel and see if they come. There's definitely been a shift regionally. Okay, Europe is divesting from Israel right now, but U.S. is increasing, and pound for pound, I'll take that honestly.
And
Um,
and
Go
Ezra,
ahead.
so to build on that, like, so what's interesting is the first visit to your country, people really had interesting questions, and they were surprised I was going. And then I came back, and I'm a party of one, and I'm just telling what I saw, the opportunities, the story, and people that I'm talking to, they're blown away, and to a point where they're like, "Is this making sense?" Because their idea of Israel and Tel Aviv was different than what I was telling. And then the more I talked to him, the more opportunities and being involved with Ezra and his colleagues, the story that I'm telling, and I'm a party of one, people are getting interested. And I'm only one person. And you think the more people that start telling this story, it's that snowball, James, and it's gonna be both great for both countries.
At what point, I have so much to absorb from what you've both just said, and I had so many different directions of where I wanted to take it. So I'm going to try and streamline it the best I can because a few things you mentioned about the sky rises in Tel Aviv, and when I moved to Tel Aviv 8 years ago, I had moved actually from London, but via New York because I had lived there for a few years, and I lived in Manhattan, so I was an ant in the grid system there for a long time. And one of the things I noticed about Tel Aviv when I moved here was just how low it was. You know, how I could see so much of the sky. And boy, is that not true today. You go in Tel Aviv, even I'm walking around and I'm like, wait, was this building here a few months ago? Like the rate of construction here with large, big skyscrapers that have big global accounting firms' names or law firm names or unicorn tech companies with their names high up on them is really it's just astounding for me to have been here over this rate of change. And I want to now kind of take that into, Travis, what you were saying about the story of one and the things that you were, or party of one, and the stories that you were telling that would shift people's minds. Because from where I'm sitting, there isn't such a concern, broadly speaking, about business returning to Israel, because there is investor confidence that's showing itself, and companies like Nvidia are coming and investing here. But what there is quite a concern about is the return to tourism. It's the everyday folks who are thinking of visiting, but now won't. You know, the same example, right, of putting the toe in the water. At what part does the investment or public market story play in the tourism story, in getting people to come and visit, like you did, Travis, just coming and seeing it for itself and enjoying the food along the way? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm stretching too much there.
No, you make sense. I think it's like any country, you have dual parts of it. When you have economic commerce happening on business to business and different stuff, and it happens more and more naturally, business people are exposed to the culture. They're exposed to everything you're talking about. And then what naturally happens is then it becomes part of the vacation planning. Now it's up to the municipalities and the government officials to also tell the story from tourism. And you can see it around the world of where hot tourist spots pop up. And it's because that's where the government step in, or the tourism industry steps in, and they start telling their side of the story, right? I mean, there's a Mandarin Oriental hotel going up right there next to the beach, right? That's a super high-end product. So there's already really smart people planning for this, and you're already seeing what's being built. So I think, James, there's already a game plan in place, unbeknownst to us on this call, that's already developing that story out and preparing for that, because there's a lot of smart people there, and I think they're on it.
That's wonderful. That's comforting to know, because that's not a field I know at all. But I'll be very happy to see high-end hotel. I very rarely stay in a hotel in Tel Aviv, in the city. You very rarely stay in a hotel in the city you live in. So it's always nice to have an outsider perspective as well. That sounds great. I know that's definitely part of the conversation post-war, or when that happens, of how exactly boots are going to come on the ground again, not just in a business sense, but in a see it for yourself, sit on the beach, enjoy a falafel kind of way.
But I have a theory about that, James. I believe it starts with business, because the tourism industry in Israel has always been based on someone that has a historical connection, from whatever religion to Israel. And I think they're going to come back no matter what. But if Travis's neighbor is going to decide to go to Tel Aviv for a summer vacation or a winter vacation instead of Nice, for example, it's going to be because of business. It's going to be because Travis and his business friends have gone there and done business in Tel Aviv and said, this place is unbelievable. You don't know what it's like. And maybe that's speaking my book or my story, but I believe that the way to seed that and to get that flywheel going is with bringing more outsiders to see the business opportunity in Israel, to make it more global, more cosmopolitan.
And to build on, I mean, you look at it, there are some of the most historic world sites in Israel, right? And that, of course, is going to be a massive draw, because who doesn't want to see history? But then you have an amazing boardwalk with one of the most pristine beaches I've ever seen, with activity going till midnight, people working out, running, cafes open, restaurants open. I mean, world class. I mean, heck, we ate at, I forget this one restaurant. It was one of the best restaurants in the world I've ever been at. And they had a fish locker. Like, literally, I've never seen a fish locker. I've seen the meat lockers in the U.S.
That was on the beach too, yeah.
Right. But what I'll tell you is seeing those type of accommodations and that type of structure. I mean, my advice to anybody, if they're looking at visiting Israel, don't just go visit the historic sites, but go visit the city. Get in bed, because if you think about what is attractive about travel, and when people go to Europe or Great Britain or different parts of the world, they love, or when other people come to America, people come for the culture. They come to embed themselves in society, to see what it's like to live there, to experience the sounds, smells, sights, right? And that's the other part of Tel Aviv. Yes, my trips have been heavy, heavy business. But on the other side of it, I'm like, I want to bring my daughters. I want to bring my wife, because there are those nichey just cafes and that nightlife and this stuff. And that's another part of the story that it's going to get out there and it's going to become a hotbed, but it takes everybody to do it.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I always love to hear, I think everyone does, to hear the outsider's perspective of your home, because it's so hard to see that. You have to take a step back to always see those kinds of things. And so to hear folks from everywhere talk about the things that they're picking up is always lovely. And I would go one step further and to say that, there's more to Israel. And it took me years to figure this out as well. There's more to Israel than Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Like I live up in the north of the country. We have like mountains and we go hiking and there's wineries. And then my family and I took a holiday down to the desert where we slept under the stars and barbecued and took our 4x4. So there really is, you drive an hour in any direction here and there's just different terrains and cultures and experiences. And as you said, different histories and different modern opportunities. So it's great. Anyway, I don't want to romanticize it too much. I want to encourage everyone to come and see it for themselves, either in a business context or just a holiday context. But guys, I do have to sadly bring this conversation towards its close. We are running out of time, although I feel like I could talk forever about some of the exciting opportunities that are coming up. Before we end, I do want to give you folks an opportunity to share with us here some of the updates that you folks have, anything to look forward to. What are some of the projects that you have in the pipeline, or some of the ways that you intend to continue bridging the gaps or doing outreach? I mean, I know maybe it's currently a bit up in the air, as no one can go in the air, if you'll pardon the wordplay, but tell me a bit about some of the things lined up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the good news is that in this post-COVID world, I think a lot of people have accepted the fact that almost everything can be done virtually, like we're doing now, even though we would prefer to be there in person. From my perspective, everything is business as usual. We're not going to stop doing anything differently. It's been 2 decades now that I've been investing in deep tech and hardware innovation in Israel. And we're going to keep doing that from my side. And the experience that I've had with Travis in bridging him to Israel has only given me further initiative and excitement to try and reproduce that. During the war, I brought 7 or 8 economic missions to Israel with the CEOs and business leaders to come see that Israel was still investable, and gave them a peek behind the curtain. But they were all Jewish, which is nothing wrong with that. It's great. And a lot of people said to me that were not Jewish during this time, I would like to come. And I always said to them, so come with me on my next trip. Travis is the only one that has. And so now I'm more encouraged to try and produce that more. But other than that, business as usual.
Fantastic. Travis, any final comments, any final statements, wishes, dreams?
No, all I can tell anybody is the opportunities that are between the two countries are more impressive than you can imagine. And you're always going to look out for, your primary business, but make sure you say yes to people like Ezra and go see what the opportunities in some areas of the world that maybe people didn't think there were opportunities, but there's more than you could ever imagine. And the last thing to probably leave you with is what makes it really special is your people and your culture, because they're just genuinely good people. And that's what who people want to associate with and work with.
Well, we can't wait to have you guys back here, boots on the ground, and we'll do one of those Tel Aviv coffees in the coffee shops, or maybe a beer on the beach, whatever you prefer. Guys, one last question. What is the best way for those watching or listening today to get in touch with you, follow you, keep up to date with some of the things that you're doing?
You can find me on the internet. My company's called Varana Capital. I write on LinkedIn under Ezra Gardner, thoughts that I have on Israel and Israeli innovation. I do not get political at all. I just talk about Israeli innovation on LinkedIn. And if you want to see about Israeli innovation, go look at what I write there.
LinkedIn would be, James, the best avenue. And, my favorite thing is business. I absolutely love business and connecting people. So anybody that ever wants to talk business or connect or be connected to somebody else, I mean, I take a lot of pride on that because that's how we all help each other.
Wonderful. Guys, I'll make sure to put your links and your information down at the bottom so anyone can get in touch or follow you as they see fit. Guys, thank you so much for your time and insights today. I'm really sorry we couldn't do this in person, but I really value and appreciate doing this how we did. It's a testament to the resilience and how the show must go on. And I can't wait to do it again physically when the skies open up and we can welcome you back.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, James.